Good morning from the fireside room of Wayfinding Academy. This is one of our videos in our Chats with the Founder sequence, and we actually have a fake fire for a fireside chat this morning. So I'm Michelle, founder and president of Wayfinding, and I am so excited this morning to be talking with Erica. Tell us a little bit.
Good morning.
Erica, who are you and what's your role here?
All right, I'm Erica Compere, and my new role here is the Director of Equitable Learning. And I'm also doing a little communications as well, so I'm excited about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So wonderful to have you on the team. It's been what, like a month? No, a month and a half now.
Yeah, August 20th, I think, is when I started.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right?
Oh my gosh, time does not even matter right now. We don't
it's
understand
at this point. It always has been. We've created time.
That's right. That's true. It just feels extra wobbly and squishy right now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With all the stuff that's going on.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on.
Lots.
Started this morning for me with the
what's happening right now for you?
Right now for me. Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
Right now for me.
Yeah, because yesterday was the day that they issued the verdict in the trial,
Mm-hmm.
yeah? And it was way less than satisfactory. Not
Way
even
less.
remotely close to.
It was insulting.
It was. It really
was insulting.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think and that's how I started my day, was
Mm-hmm.
listening to on the way here, listening to the news.
Yeah.
And I had, the typical elementary emotions, sadness, rage. Well, I guess that's not elementary. Rage, I think. And then the yelling at the at the car radio.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of an undercurrent, kind of always. It's just, you walk in the world with this general, and you just learn to accept it. I'll be 50 on Saturday, so you just learn to accept that this is the way it is. But it shouldn't be.
You shouldn't. That shouldn't be the thing that we have to do. No.
Right. And so, there are ways that people respond. For 100 plus days in Portland, that's what we've been doing, is responding. I am a mom, so I've got to be home, and it just hasn't been safe to respond in that way.
Yeah.
And bring my kids into that because I have a little one. So, but my little one, who's an 8-year-old African American male, I'm also teaching him to get down on the ground so that he knows the position to take when he's faced with a police situation.
Yeah.
And so that makes me sad. So when I say that, I'm using these little words to describe these huge feelings, just to simplify the conversation.
Right.
Because it's too much. It's overwhelming. And there are no words in the English language to articulate that at all. So the best that I can do in terms of my response, which is why I'm so excited about this role, is to transform that language barrier, that ability to communicate all the various ways to observe and live in the world when you are of color, and to be able to have it be heard in such a way that the response that you want in that scenario actually helps and heals rather than does more harm.
Yeah.
And so what I like about the title of Equitable Learning is that it doesn't focus on the social constructions of race, class, gender, sexuality, all of those mountains of all of these human attributes that have been turned into mountains of obstacles, right? How do we tear down those mountains? How do we do that? And when we're trying to do that, we're responding to these mountains. It's hard. It literally feels like carrying the weight of a mountain on your shoulders. Because if you were to feel what I felt this morning, it changes minds.
Yes.
And the only way to do that is to be present and in relationship and communicating these things from both a head and a heart place.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is through education. What I like about Wayfinding is there's so many different ways that we can educate. Standard systems only choose one way, which is this, which has been in existence since the 1600s, right?
Something like that.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
And we can just completely scrap that and be like, what's the best way to learn? Yes, we're dealing with some pretty deep, heavy issues here.
Right.
But how can we teach that How can we teach to these moments beyond just the higher academic, intellectual way of learning, but in this feeling place? And if we use experiential learning, and if we do our learning differently in a circle instead of behind desks and lines, we open doors to all kinds of understanding. And so that's the reason why I'm here, is because Wayfinding offers that type of learning, or types, multiple types, and is open and ready to have the big conversations that include not just your head, but your heart as well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying all of that, and for sharing also like how this is for you personally. As you know, one of the things that we hope that people will do when they come to Wayfinding, whatever their capacity, whether it's faculty or crew or students or guides, is show up as whole humans. That's part of our philosophy, is like we all get to show up as our whole selves every single time. So one of Wayfinding's goals right now, because we're still a very, very tiny college, but we have an outsized influence in the conversation that's happening right now, at least in our city and our state, but potentially beyond, about systemic racism in higher education and what we can be doing to dismantle that, and the inequities that exist in the higher education industrial complex. So are you willing to share a little bit about like your thoughts on that from your perspective of decades of watching education do what education does to young adults?
Okay. Yeah. The short answer is there are two systems in our history that are the slowest to change. One is the church, and the other is education.
Right.
And so you're looking at this slug of a system that moves at this crawling space, and it's intentional. It's by design. Right. And if you'll notice today with the results of Taylor, the first thing that they offered the offering was, we'll create a task force. And so that's basically like saying, let's form a committee on committees to talk about whether or not we should really be a committee about. And it's basically it's white fragility at its worst, because people just want to talk about it but not actually do anything about it, and because doing hurts, right?
It's hard. That takes commitment.
People think talking about it is difficult. Doing the work is the actual hard work. But just getting people to the table to talk about it is such a fragile experience.
Totally. Yeah.
And from an Oregon perspective, they've managed to live that experience for decades. I left Oregon for 30 years.
Yeah.
Came back for 1 year in an attempt to see, has anything changed? Nothing had changed. It was the same thing. Just trying to keep the conversation on the table was a struggle. I remember the president of the University of Oregon at the time, he was really proud of the effort that he was able to just keep the conversation on the table. Like that to me that's when I knew, I can't be here. I can't, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
If you have to fight just to keep the conversation on the table, that's ridiculous. Well, here we are today, right now. Portland Public Schools went through weeks of negotiations with their teachers about what they need to do in order to start school back up for the new year. They had two issues on the table: equity issues, right, and teacher planning. Now, for me, teacher planning is a no-brainer. We're in the middle of a virus. We shouldn't even have to give extra hours. We shouldn't have to argue about extra hours for teachers to plan for this mess. But they spent the whole time arguing about that, and so that they didn't have any time left to deal with the equity issue. It's always at the back, and that's the history, and that's why we're still here, is because equity issues are something that's put on the side or at the end or when we have time, when we're not already busy. But the problem is, equity issues, if you put it at the top, a lot of the crap that you're really trying to solve will get solved by itself, because a lot of that stuff is a result of the equity issues. And so if you can solve the equity issues, then all of these other little fires you don't have to put out anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
So would that be your suggestion for educational institutions and organizations that are trying to do things differently?
Yeah,
it's like start with equity. Yeah.
Start with equity.
Sounds like a fairly basic principle that if you just go with that. Yeah.
Start with equity, and then stop talking about it. Stop posting statements on your website to show a response to an immediate crisis. Start doing the work so that those crises stop popping up.
Right.
And you don't have to use words anymore because it's done. The action is done. It's taken, move on. We can't move on because we're still talking about it.
Right. Right.
Cheers, let's have a chat.
Oh my gosh.
Let's talk about it. No. Yeah. How about we just do it?
Yeah.
That's the difference between a lot of states where they actually do something, right?
Right.
Or a lot of institutions or a lot of organizations, they're out there doing the work versus let's sit and talk about what we could do.
Right.
Well, John Lennon's Imagine was a great song, but eventually we as listeners have to get up and do something.
Yeah.
And imagine that transformative world that we're all singing about.
That's right. Yeah. So one of the things that we've been talking about a lot lately as a crew and faculty and guides is just how hard things are right now on so many levels for every human being. It's just very hard to be a human right now. And we're noticing, we've been talking a lot, back to your point about language, we've been talking a lot about helping our community members, especially our students, with resilience and understanding what that means and how to be that. So if you had something you could say to the students, like to all of the students, I guess wayfinding students first, but then any young people right now who are trying to navigate this, and you also have a daughter who's about that age.
15, yeah.
That's right. So what would you say to the young adults who are struggling right now?
Baby, hold on. It's going to be all right. Just hold on. Yeah. And then for me, and I'm going to give an example. I had to get poked by a needle recently, and I have 5-year-old fear of needles. And the only thing that got me through it was thinking of how much worse it is for those people out in the fields picking the food that I'm probably going to go to the grocery store and buy next week, right? They're going through this smoke inhalation with the fires and everything. And so I talked myself through that, right? By thinking about how much worse it could be, right? It's bad, no doubt, but how much worse it could be, right? And I would tell folks, when you feel at your worst, to go do your best, what you're good at. So whether that be art, go do some art and do it badly, but you're doing what you do, right? Do some bad art, do some, if you're really into whatever you go into the woods and scream, right? If nature is your thing, go in the woods and scream. Get it out some kind of way. You got to get it out, whatever that is. But do it in a healthy way, right? A lot of us, we turn to these other ways just because it's immediate, it's fast. We either, I'm not doing this anymore, I quit, it's too much, or, we waste our talents and our gifts because maybe we're struck with fear about what's coming next, and because we can't figure out what's coming next, we can't decide what to do next. Yeah. And so then we get into this place of feeling helpless, and then we're helpless, we're hopeless, and then we fall into despair, and then we don't want to get out of bed, right? Just give yourself credit for what you are doing. You got up, you got out of bed. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Give yourself a point for the day. Now, is there anything else that's easy that you can do, that you're good at, that you enjoy doing? Because even when the crisis happened with COVID, I couldn't even write. I couldn't do art. I had no desire to do anything creative.
Yeah.
My creativity brain just shut off. But I went outside and I ripped out some weeds, and I dumped dirt in a pile so that I can plant a garden. I mean, I do something that's good, or that you're good at, that makes you feel good. Or even when you feel bad, go to that feel good place and feel bad there.
Yeah.
Right? But then come back and just do, that's the dance, is just stay in the game.
Yeah.
Stay in the game, and it's going to be okay. It's been worse.
Yeah.
It's been worse. Find someone who will see you and be present and hold on to them and develop that relationship and maintain those relationships, gather more. Gather more, right? To build a hedge of protection around you, because you're going to need it.
Yeah. And when you're doing okay comparatively, you can be that for other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because helping other folks, it lifts you up, because number one is you're not thinking about how hard it is for you.
Yeah.
In that moment, which even if you get a break from that, that can be a huge lift.
Yeah.
It really can. So going out to help somebody else, and that doesn't mean you need to be out in the streets necessarily and being tear gassed to be part of the, helping with the fight, but just sitting there and listening to someone, right? Or sending them a text or something that brings people back in.
Yeah.
What helps you, it helps them. It's a win-win.
Such good advice. I asked for advice for young adults, but I think that's good advice for everybody of all the ages.
That's true.
We should probably take that advice
I'm
ourselves.
Talking to myself.
I know. I was just going to say, I think you're talking to us right now.
Talking to myself.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thanks. Thank you for that, Erica. I love it. Okay. So since you're still new to the Wayfinding team, one of the things you've heard us talk about a little bit, you haven't yet got the chance to experience directly, is that we have an extended community of people who support the things that Wayfinding does. Our luminaries, our donors, our board members, and everybody else who's just a fan and a friend who wants to support the work that we're doing. So if you could ask those people for anything, for some kind of support, for things that you need, things that you want to be able to do your role here more effectively, what would you want to ask that community for?
Well, first of all, I said, don't go back to sleep.
Yep.
That would be first. Stay awake. Things are changing constantly. And even when things look better, it's usually the surface level of things that are getting done. And so go deeper. At least, I say go to the third or fourth page of the Google search instead of the first three, to make sure things are actually being changed all the way through. I would also say use your privilege, whatever you've got. I know I have privilege because when people look at me, they don't see Black because they understand Black to look and act and be a certain way. And so I recognize I use that privilege to do what I need to do in order to do, my little inroads in to make a difference. So use your privilege, whether that be money, whether that be time, whether that be any other kind of resource. Because essentially when we're talking about any kind of system that is inequitable, we're talking about who gets what and how much. And so if you have much, give much. To whom much is given, much is expected. And sitting back and ranting at the radio like I did this morning, it's not going to be enough. We understand that you feel, frustrated by this experience, but now go do something about it. And then I would also say, before you make those decisions, listen, hear the whole story and see where you fit in. Don't assume that you know the answers, because you don't. I don't. Nobody does, because this is too big for any one person to know. But a lot of people talking who know something about this have all been saying the same things. And so, you're noticing a pattern of conversations here, and the holes in the issues are pretty clear because everybody's saying it. They've been saying it since we got here 400 years ago. We're going to keep saying the same things. It's not changing, and therefore the issues are still the same. I got this little, they have these words that they post up and they're supposed to be profound. Well, one that I picked up recently was, nothing changes if nothing changes, period. And it's just that simple.
It really is, actually. It really is.
It really is. And I got it. I brought it home. And my daughter was like, what do you mean? I'm like,
no, that's it.
There is no hidden meaning behind that, right? And so if we're still here yelling and screaming and throwing things,
right,
like if we're still upset, probably something hasn't really changed. Yes, we got Obama. Yes, we have, yes, all of these little things, these appearances make it look like things are cool, but clearly not.
Right.
And so if you've been asleep on that, you should probably figure out, how did that happen? How was I not aware? Start there.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh my gosh, I love the answer. All right, so everybody who's watching this, you just heard what to do. So stay awake, use your privilege, and if you want to keep the conversation going with us, reach out. We are here all the time and happy to find ways to give you the opportunity to take action with us. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here.